We have plenty to discuss here in today's video, including some trade talk around a bunch of teams, including teams like the New Jersey Devils and the Minnesota Wild. If the Wild get to the point that they have to trade Kaprizov, we have another scenario discussed by a Wild beat reporter Michael Russo that could make sense with the Carolina Hurricanes. Plus, we have the latest updates on contract situations between Connor McDavid and the Oilers, Marty Necas and the Avalanche, and Mike Matheson and the Montreal Canadiens. Plus, we also have a big update on cities who want to host the World Cup of Hockey in 2028, an update on Carter Hart's future. A couple of PTOs have been announced, and the Rangers have a brand new captain as well. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Let's kick things off with the news that we got this morning from the New York Rangers announcing that they have a new captain. It'll be the 29th captain in franchise history, and that was newly acquired forward JT Miller, of course, who came over partway through last season from the Vancouver Canucks. Of course, it's kind of, I know some people were looking at this going, well, geez, he couldn't even coexist with Elias Pettersson in Vancouver. But obviously the Rangers view him quite differently than the Canucks did. Clearly in Vancouver, he was kind of viewed as a player that probably needed to move on. But you know what? The Rangers seem like they absolutely embraced his everything about him and just how hard he plays and how his leadership works and everything. And I'm not surprised by this. I really thought it would be Trocheck or Miller. I thought they might go with Trocheck just because he's longer tenured there, and maybe Miller wears an A. Obviously Adam Fox I think was under consideration as well to some degree. Zibanejad, who I all believe all those players will wear A's. I think they're going to have 4 different players wear A's. They'll probably do a rotation of 2 at home, 2 on the road, something along those lines. They haven't officially announced the A's, but it's believed that there will be 4 players in the mix there for that. So JT Miller, 29th captain in Rangers history. The Boston Bruins today also have announced that they've made a few changes within their front office. They've promoted former player Adam McQuaid, who's been working in player development. He now will be leading that department and becomes the director of player development. So good on McQuaid. Obviously, like I said, a longtime player who's been working with the Bruins here on the development side for the last few years. A couple more PTOs were announced here today as well. Oliver Wahlstrom is going to training camp with the San Jose Sharks on a PTO. He does have an American Hockey League contract, so he is going to be part of the Sharks organization. At the very least, he'll be playing with the Barracuda in the American Hockey League, but he is going to the NHL training camp on his PTO to see if he has any shot at cracking the NHL roster or to get upgraded to a 2-way contract. Obviously, if not, he will go down and be on an AHL only deal. Matt Grzelcyk, of course, is going to camp with the Blackhawks. Last year, Grzelcyk had another pretty good year, 40-point campaign. It seems odd that he took so long to get something firmed up for the upcoming season, and it's a PTO and not at least a 1-year contract. Some people were questioning why the Blackhawks would do this. I think that the Blackhawks are really in a situation where they don't, you could say San Jose is in the same boat. Neither of these teams really want to put, I think, too much pressure on their young talent, and they don't want to have to put players in spots that they may not be ready for, where they can continue to kind of season and develop in the American Hockey League or have a lesser role while they're continuing to get older, mature, get better, and all that. Looking at Chicago, looking at San Jose, there's a number of veterans that were brought in there and will probably take spots from young talented kids. But in the long run, it seems to be the approach that they're taking. Look at the Sharks. I know not Chicago, but they've got a number of veteran defensemen that joined the team in the offseason, whether it be Leddy or Orlov or Klingberg, but some of their guys will just have time to percolate and develop and not worry about playing big NHL minutes here just yet. So we'll see if Grzelcyk can land a contract with Chicago. Now, an update on Carter Hart's future. Of course, we know the 5 junior players who were acquitted of charges a few weeks ago will be allowed to return to the NHL as of December the 1st, and they can sign contracts in October if teams want to be able to sign them. There's been a lot of talk about Hart probably getting the most interest amongst the five. Flyers general manager Danny Briere did make a comment on Carter Hart's situation, it confirming, which we already kind of heard from other reporters, that Carter Hart will definitely not be back with the Philadelphia Flyers. Briere confirmed that. The Hart and his agent had made it clear that they would like a fresh start with a new team, new city, and that going back to Philly is just not something that they're interested in. And a reporter, Michael Russo, his comments on Hart says that he's heard there's a number of teams out west with interest, and a couple that Hart has especially high interest in as well, and that that's most likely where he's going to end up. But there's some around rumors around Utah, but I know one Utah reporter kind of poured cold water on that, didn't think that was going to be an option. Their team sources were saying that no, there wouldn't be a landing spot for Hart. But Russo, who is very well connected, and he's not the only one to say this, that definitely Western teams will be the area to watch for Hart to sign. So we will see where that goes. Chris Johnson of TSN today, I had an update on the World Cup of Hockey for 2028. We know that a while back the NHL had put out a notice of saying if any cities that were interested in hosting the 2028 World Cup to apply. And apparently there's a ton of interest. They've got 25 cities across Europe and North America that have put their name forth to host this event. So they've finished that stage of the process, and they're now at what they would refer to as the RFP stage, which will include workshops so that representatives from these cities can go and be kind of briefed on the bidding requirements and everything that they are going to be expected to be able to do and provide. So in early 2026, there will be an announcement from the NHL and the NHLPA on a couple of host cities. It is expected that there's going to be one host city in North America and one host city in Europe. So it sounds like there will be games on both continents. So we'll see who those end up to be at a little bit of a later date. Now, some updates on players that are on expiring deals and looking for contract extensions. We'll start in Montreal. Defenseman Mike Matheson. I know comments from the player himself at the Habs golf tournament the other day. Yesterday, I believe it was, made it clear that he wants to stay in Montreal. I know there's a lot of people that think that his time at the Habs will likely come to an end this season and a trade is possible. And I do think it is possible, but according to the player, he certainly would like to stay, and that there are negotiations on an extension taking place behind the scenes. So, with the arrival of Dobson and the emergence of Hudson, you have to think Matheson's role is definitely going to be reduced. But, looking at how the Habs decor is structured, you've got those two young, dynamic offensive defensemen, and then you've got guys like Caden Gooley and Alex Carrier, of course, who are more... Carrier's pretty defensive-minded. Like, you don't get much offense out of him. Gooley, I think it's fair to say, is probably a little bit more defensive-minded, but he can chip in a little bit more on the offense, a little bit more of a shot and things like that. But, those are probably going to be your top four guys. Now, Matheson's, great skater, can work a lot of minutes. Is he going to end up being a third-pair defenseman? Like I said, there's possibility that the third pair could be a case of Matheson with either Struble or Jackeye. What is his role going to be? I would think another team, there's teams out there that would be able to play him higher in their lineup, maybe give him a raise. Like, you look at his contract, making under $5 million, like he could probably get 7.5, 8, amongst other teams that are more of in need of a puck mover who can play a more offensive role and be the top one or two offensive D on the team instead of being like the third or fourth. So obviously, like I said, there's interest from both sides to some degree to keep him. I know that Matheson does have a long relationship with Hughes, Ken Hughes, that is the GM, but I know most people think that this relationship shouldn't continue, but I guess we'll see what they work out on an extension and if they end up making that decision. There's other young D in the organization as well, so I'll be curious to see where that works out. But Could he be moved? Absolutely. Just because they're talking about an extension, it doesn't mean that they're going to come to an agreement on something that both sides are quite happy with, and we'll see where that goes. Now, of course, Marty Necas is another very, very interesting name to watch as we go into the season. I know he was a topic on TSN Insider Trading today, and obviously looked at, one of the options for the fact that he's going into the last year of his contract. Of course, the Avalanche didn't want to pay Mikko Rantanen, ended up pulling off that massive trade last year with the Hurricanes where they get Necas, and now Necas, continued to be a point-per-game player, and obviously, they're in a situation now where Necas needs a new deal, and he may not be able to command quite as much as Rantanen was, but it's probably not going to be off too far if you look at the rising salary cap, his continued strong performance. There's definitely an argument to be made wondering, especially looking at what Rantanen ended up signing for in Dallas, should they have just signed and paid Rantanen and been done with it instead of deciding that they didn't want to go there on the contract? So obviously, Necas' future with the Avalanche will be interesting for sure. You have to think, again, like all these players, if they are in fear and think that the odds of signing him are not good, that they have to figure out a way to get something back. So a trade could be possible. We know when Necas signed that short deal with the Hurricanes before he was traded, that was part of the reason why. It was going to give him a chance to get to free agency at a young age, and it was also going to give them an opportunity to be able to trade him without having a long-term deal. So it kind of gave both sides some flexibility. They found a way to move on and obviously, get a good player back, which unfortunately they couldn't keep in Carolina. But, if you're Necas and you're the Avalanche, that's going to be a very interesting contract negotiation, considering I would think that, they were reluctant to pay Rantanen. What are they going to end up paying Necas? It's probably not going to be too much less. So will they end up doing it, or will they change their mind on him as well? The latest on Connor McDavid, according to Chris Johnson, was that obviously we know training camp's mostly open tomorrow for physicals and evaluations that way. Most teams will get on the ice the following day on Thursday. So is McDavid going into training camp without an extension? It sure seems like it, because we're pretty much out of time. But could something get figured out before the season starts in October? It's certainly still possible. But the main things that we know about McDavid that CJ reiterated and kind of touched on more today was it's really all about the roster composition for years, like not so much the coming season, but for 2, 3, and 4 years down the road. McDavid's reiterated a number of times publicly that he's quite confident and comfortable that the team they have in place for the coming season can again be a really good team who can contend for the Stanley Cup. So he's not so much worried about now, but I think the big thing for him is, because really he's going to kind of call his own shot here. If he wants a 2-year deal, a 4-year deal, a 6-year deal, they're going to give him whatever he wants. He's the best player in the game. He also has made it pretty clear that he's not all about money, and he's not going to take enough money to kind of handcuff them from making the team as strong as possible around him. He obviously wants to be paid fairly, but not going to be overly greedy. So the big thing is just the roster. He obviously has concerns that it's an aging roster. Like I said, you look at a lot of the top supporting guys around him, whether it be Ekholm or Hyman or Nugent Hopkins. They're all, 2, 3, 4, 5 years older than him. And, is this team going to be the same in 2 or 3 years' time or beyond that, right? And then what's the plan to make sure that they can eventually replace these guys and continue to be contending at a high level? So McDavid wants to be able to, every year goes into training camp, knows that the team has a shot and can be considered a contender. So that's his biggest thing. It's not so much about anything else. So once he determines what timeline he's comfortable with, for at least for right now, based on where the roster is at and what the plan is for where it's heading, that'll be when we get a deal done. Could he do a 2-year deal even? It's possible. He may decide to do really short just to keep the pressure on the organization. So we'll see, but the biggest factor around McDavid right now, more than anything, is roster composition on a longer-term basis. So at what point he gets comfortable to sign, it's really unclear. When it comes to the New Jersey Devils, another topic on TSN Insider Trading today, talking about unsigned RFA Luke Hughes. Pierre LeBrun touched on this one, saying that he talked to Devil sources and saying that both sides continue to grind away. And he said he had a team source and a player source, and they were both kind of made the same sort of comment that they're grinding away, trying to get something done so that obviously Luke Hughes doesn't miss training camp or the season. At this point, he is, on track to miss at least the beginning of camp, considering, I said, players have to report tomorrow for physicals, and right now he's unsigned the day after they go on the ice. So, one big thing he did talk about was the fact that the Devils may end up having to move a contract after they get a deal done with Luke Hughes, and that clearly, it's a tight cap situation. We know that a lot of it's going to depend on what term he goes with, and that's going to determine what their next move is. Mentions the idea of maybe a Dougie Hamilton move, saying that they're not quite there yet, but you only need so many puck movers, so many guys who can play the power play. Other teams out there will probably have interest. He does have control to some degree over his contract as well, so he can have some say where he goes if he does have to move. But certainly Luke Hughes and the Devils still grinding away, and it could result in a subsequent move. And mentioning Hamilton's name is probably not a coincidence that he could be, making $9 million. So we'll see where that goes. Kirill Kaprizov in Minnesota. I know LeBron also touched on this on Insider Trading. We also have comments from Michael Russo of who was still filling in for the DFL rundown with Daily Faceoff. LeBron's comments made it pretty clear that as of right this minute, as of right now, the Wild are not actively engaging in trade conversations to move Kirill Kaprizov. Their top focus and priority is still to sign him, which is not shocking at all. A lot of the chatter around a Kaprizov trade is really if they get to that point. Let's believe that, if they feel that they are going to be not having a good chance, that they need to explore that, right? So we'll see where that goes in the coming days. Some people question whether or not, it's not just about the $16 million over 8 years. I mean, that's all great that they offer them all that kind of money in cash, but could it be an issue of how it's paid out? Is there some signing bonus issues? Is there no move clause issues? Those types of things that can be in there and be a big part of the negotiation as well, which we aren't really aware of. Now, Michael Russo did go on to say if it reaches a point that the Wild feel like they need to consider a trade, he mentions Carolina as a team to watch. Now, he says that clearly they're a team that he's heard has heavy interest in Kaprizov, and they would be willing to pay him in the neighborhood of what has already been offered to him by the Wild or more. So it could be a potential landing spot for him if things reach the point that the Wild feel like they don't have a choice but to make a move. Now, he goes on to say that clearly a lot of the players that would be of interest to Minnesota to ask for in a return trade have a lot of trade protection in their contracts, like a Sebastian Aho, for example, and he likely wouldn't agree to move. But one name that does not have trade protection that might be intriguing to the Wild, and has certainly been a good goal scorer in the past, is Andrei Svechnikov. To be honest, if I'm Carolina and I have the option to include Svechnikov for Kaprizov, I make that deal all day long. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a one-for-one deal. Russo didn't necessarily say that either, but that he would be a good roster player that could be a starting point of discussions. I mean, I think they'd have to add more. I don't think Minnesota takes that straight up because I think Kaprizov is by far the more productive player. So it would have to be Svechnikov and something else. Is that Svechnikov and a first? Is it Svechnikov and a prospect? Is it Svechnikov and another roster player? Like there'd have to be more. We know the Hurricanes have been pretty dead set on getting a star player. They took a swing on Rantanen, unfortunately, and lost out. In fact, he didn't want to stay there. They got Stankoven, who's been a real nice player for them, but again, lacking that star power. Kaprizov could be that guy if they reach that point. Now, again, as of right now, Minnesota's not actively trying to trade him. There's no official, or dialogue going on with other teams about Kaprizov, but the fact that he's rejected the contract that he did makes a huge suggestion that maybe he will end up getting moved because of not wanting to stay there or thinking another team will pay more. So we'll have to monitor the situation, but certainly one fun scenario to think about, in my opinion, would be a Wild and Hurricanes trade involving these two top Russian players. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.